Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for April 7th, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly, which is our podcast and webcast that we do every week to talk about all things organizing, that you, our viewers, give us information and ideas and questions on all of our channels. So we're going to talk about some today, and we appreciate you're here.
If you're joining us in the Zoom meeting for the first time, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. We're streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can also share your questions and suggestions there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. During the live webcast each Tuesday, you can talk to us directly by calling 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 to join the meeting. First thing we want to talk about today is we had a comment after our talk on self-talk for an uncluttered lifestyle. A couple of people said, give us more. They need more coaching in that area.
More commentary.
Yeah. And so we sort of wanted to return to that. And what are your thoughts on that, Gayle? What are some more suggestions in that area?
So this was the topic where we were talking about what does a non-cluttered or a less cluttered or an uncluttered person say to themselves instead of somebody who struggles with clutter. And so we thought we'd add a couple more ideas. So if you are more comfortable being uncluttered, then one of the things that you might say to yourself is, as you pick up a piece of clothing or a decorative object or a gift that has outlived its life, you're going to say something like, this thing is not who I am anymore. So that is a commentary where you're reflecting that while this object is in your life, still it's part of a previous version of you. It's part of a previous focus of you. It's part of a previous job or a previous hobby, something that happened in an older time in your life, but no longer reflects what you're actively doing now. And so the way that they say that is, this thing is not about who I am anymore. This is not about my current life. This is not, this object, this clothing, this thing doesn't reflect what's happening for me currently. And it's a way of filtering whether or not you need to keep it, because if it's not something you're actively using, then you're really just keeping it for the sentiment of the things you used to do in your life. And so an uncluttered person will view that critically and say, this is part of my former life, and it'll be easier for them to let it go.
Gayle, you know, for me, that was kind of the groundbreaking thought when you and I worked together to clear out the house that I was preparing to sell back in 2007. You said that to me. We had that conversation about several particular objects. One was a souvenir of a trip that I had taken when I was 15 years old, and another one was a gift that a friend had given me right around, like at the end of college.
Yeah, eons
and
ago.
So you were sort of able to help me see that those were not who I am anymore at that point. And that sort of opened my mind to the mindset that none of your stuff has to define you unless you want it to.
Exactly. Well, and I think a lot of times that in this context, when you're having this discussion of this is not who I am anymore, it brings up people's negative response about, I wish this is who I was still. I wish I wasn't divorced. I wish that job hadn't ended. I wish that I was still able.
I wish I still played racquetball.
Yes, I could, ski or, whatever. And so some of it is, it's a little confronting about the losses. And so I think it makes it hard sometimes for people to evaluate it and go, yes, I really cannot snow ski anymore, even though I'm 65 and I have replaced knees and a bad hip. It's like sometimes it's just a matter of trying to look realistically and critically about what you can and can't do now, or how your life has really changed, and being an acceptance of where you are now. And so this self-talk of this thing is not who I am anymore is a helpful way to filter, but it's also allows you and asks you and forces you to confront who you are right now. And, you know, sometimes we don't like what that's telling us, but it is a realistic filtering of what you own against what you can actually do and use. And it does consign some things to, I kept all this camping gear because when my kids were little, we used to go camping all the time. There's no way in hell I'm going camping now. But, you know, this reminds me of all the fun that we had when the kids were 8 and 10 and 12, and we went camping every weekend all summer long or whatever. The idea being that sometimes you keep the things because of the good memory that it evokes about what your life was doing then. And it doesn't take away, giving up all the camping gear doesn't take away the fact that you spent those years with your kids camping and having a great time. And now your kids are, you know, married with their own kids, and nobody's sleeping on the ground. Nobody wants to sleep on the ground when you're 65, right? And so this is one of those things where you can say it's not part of your life anymore without giving up the memories that they evoke. And also you can filter it for the fact that this stuff stopped being active use stuff and became keepsake memories, sentimental reminders of things that you used to do actively. And so it changes the amount of space that you want to allow it in the house. So if camping was the family thing, and for a decade you guys were in Cub Scouts or Girl Scouts, or there was a bunch of, you know, the family liked to take family vacations and go camping, and however that was, there was a decade or 15 years where that was a big part of your family life. And now that portion of your family life has passed because the kids have outgrown it, yada, yada, yada. Then the camping gear stops becoming active stuff and it starts becoming sentimental stuff. And so the amount of allocation that should be allowed in the house needs to shrink from half the garage because you guys were using all this gear to 2% because it's now sentimental keepsake stuff instead. And so sending that camping gear on to the next family that is actively going camping like you used to do surrenders the space for something that you're actually doing now and allows you to keep your memories and maybe keep a few little reminders of the camping. But, you know, better that you have pictures of the family camping together than a bunch of old camping gear that nobody is now going to use as in an active way like you did. Yeah. And so you're actually shifting the categories from I use it all the time to now it's just a memory. And you have to allocate the space differently.
And Deborah, who's with us in Zoom, has offered a great suggestion about a positive way to reframe, which is, does this support my current goals?
Exactly.
And so, you know, that's a question where you're sort of giving yourself permission to have changed, you know,
and to recognize that everybody has new goals and new interests and new things going on in their life, and or if you don't, you can and that this is how you can clear out old stuff to make room for developing a new hobby and a new activity for your family that suits your current physical capacity and lifestyle and where your family is happening right now and living. There's always room for something new going on, even as you're shedding the old ones. And so you can think of this as a way to filter and make space for new. And this thing is not who I am anymore is the sentence that starts it's not who I am, therefore I can let it go and create a blank space in order to expand some new thing in my life. And that's really, that sense of renewing and refreshing your life is really the point of decluttering all along, right? So here's another one that we also proposed today. My new uncluttered reality is better than the old cluttered alternative. So the examples are having clear counter space on which to prepare food is better than having 10 kitchen appliances. A clear work surface for crafting is better than 5 bins of unused craft supplies. And so this is a way of viewing your surroundings so in such that the less stuff that you have in the way, the better you can function. And so in your current reality, the less clutter, the more you can do and function easily. And as we age, functioning easily becomes more and more important. What it was easy for you to crawl in and around when you were 30 is not the same when you're, older. And so we've talked a lot about the intersection of clutter and aging. The older you get, the more stuff you have, and the older you get, the more your physical capacity shrinks. And there's some point where they cross and you no longer have the physical capacity to manage the pile. And so framing it in this way, the new uncluttered reality is better than the old uncluttered landscape. And I think that it's a great way to remind yourself that, yes, this is a lot of effort and it's difficult, and everything that I let go supports a new uncluttered reality. And that's a better place to live, and it's easier for you physically and mentally, and it's easier for the people around you to support you, see you, visit you, and those are all important things. That, I think, is what we have to say about self-talk today. We just wanted to add a little bit because, you guys asked for it. There you go.
I think we'll circle back to that topic because how we think about ourselves and our stuff is always at the center of all the topics we cover.
Well, exactly.
So exactly. I think more examples of positive, uncluttered self-talk will probably be useful to people. So let's go on to our main topic, which is moving in a great big hurry.
So we got this comment over the last couple of weeks from 2 different people, and so we thought it meant that it was a little bit more timely. So the viewer, My Imaginations UK, wrote, any tips for moving house in under a week? I found out last week I was flooding local Facebook groups with stuff I'm selling and giving away, but now we're in lockdown, so nobody can pick up, and I'm focusing on packing. We couldn't get a mover at an affordable price, and we want to limit contact with people outside our household. One thing I realized listening to you was the boxes being everywhere is driving me nuts. So maybe moving them to one area might help. Any ideas? And then YouTube viewer Allison wrote, hi, I'm downsizing from 5 bedrooms to 2. This was my childhood home, so it has 63 years of clutter. We have all been in some version of that. I'm moving 2,400 kilometers. I have 5.5 weeks to organize everything. The issue is other things are getting in the way. I can't engage my husband in helping as his attitude is throw everything away. I have a cervical discectomy and fusion with permanent nerve damage, and he doesn't understand why I need him to physically help me sort everything. So clearly she's in distress and trying to do a move, and anybody that is trying to do a move in a real hurry, you're going to have a panic attack, first of all, and then what do you do? So I thought we would talk about some things that you can do to make this process a little bit easier. And this is actually what I'm doing right now. I have my friends who I call Client Zero. They nicknamed themselves Client Zero this week, which I thought was hilarious. They are my very first clients, and the people who working with them is what prompted me to start my business. And so they are moving, and they sold their house right before all this stuff got crazy. Like the closing happened sometime early in March. And so they're intending to move April 30th. And the truth is that moving companies are still considered essential businesses that are operating because people still have to move. And I think we're also going to have this trouble because of the financial crisis that's happening for people who have lost their jobs and can't get out to work. And I think that people are going to suddenly have to change their living situations in order to cope with this situation. And so I'm expecting that lots of people are going to be moving in a hurry at the end of April, at the end of May, at the end of June, as they try to cope with this situation. So we thought we'd talk about this a little bit, and it's very timely for my client as well. So we're answering this question too late for the Imaginations UK person who was moving in a week, but I wanted to offer a few ideas for anybody that's in the short time frame. So once you decide that you're moving, I think the biggest mental shift that everybody has to make is your house is no longer your house. The house is now a warehouse for your stuff. So the minute that you're moving, it stops being a house. And if you're showing a house, like if you have a realtor coming in and people are coming in to look at the house, they're always telling you remove stuff, take the personal details down, blank out. Anybody that does staging erases all of your personal touches and stages it in a much more neutral way. The minute that you decide that you're moving, it doesn't matter how long you've lived in your house, it's no longer your house. It is now a house that somebody else is going to buy or rent, and it is now a warehouse where you're storing your stuff while you pack. And so changing your mind about this will help you tackle the tasks that come with dismantling your space. You may want to, and I would do this myself in any space, and I'm doing this in the job that I'm working on. Packing boxes, as you take things off of counters, out of cabinets, off the table, out from under the drawers, you start emptying all that stuff and boxing it, then suddenly you're living with a bunch of moving boxes, and they are now in your living space. And so this is something that really makes people crazy, and there's a way to cope with it as you go along. Go find a room that is not in active use all the time. The guest room comes to mind, the spare room that you use for whatever. Pack everything in that room and then dismantle that room and treat it as a storage unit. And pack it, take the bed out of it, or take the bed and break the bed down and stand the mattress up against the wall. Pack the bedding up. Stack the furniture up that's in there, and remove anything that is not actually going to go with you in the move. So this room becomes your new staging area for the things that are being packed that are actually going with you. And so you can move all the furniture that's staying in there that's actually moving with you, move it, stack it up. Don't leave it laid out so that somebody can lay on the bed. Like that, you need to back all that stuff up, stack things up, move them against the wall. And then when you start taking boxes in there, go and put them against the far wall and start stacking them in, rows of moving boxes like a cube, and start building those walls of boxes at the farthest end and work your way back towards the door. Someday you will have filled that room, but hopefully it'll be a good starting place for you to stack the early boxes that you pack. It is going to be overwhelming. And the person that was saying that she had 63 years of stuff to go through in 5 weeks with a back problem and no help that's sort of like the extreme version of it. But it does present an issue of, if you have a short compressed time frame, then you are making decisions in a much more ruthless way than you would if you had a bunch of lead time. And this is the scenario where if you can plan your move and you have a year in advance and you can work on it for weeks and weeks and weeks and call things out and return things to your friends and give things away to the right places and make things disappear in little bits at a time to all the places that you want, that's the best case scenario. And that's where you get to dispose of your stuff in the way that feels right to you and feels the most honoring and gives you the most satisfaction that everything went to the right place. And if you don't have that time and you don't get a year and suddenly you have to be out of your house, these people that are that I'm helping were not planning to sell their house. They got approached by someone who offered them a lot of money to sell their house. And so they sort of went, okay. And so they were completely not preparing for a move in any way. And suddenly they called and said, guess what? We're moving. and we're closing in 3 weeks, and we are aiming to move at the end of April. And so they went from having no plan on the horizon at all to 2 months from when they conceived it, they're going to be out of their house. And so that is a much different fire drill than spending an entire year preparing for a move. So this is just like the pandemic has focused our minds on what's truly important. The less time frame that you have to get ready for the move, the more that you have to figure out what's the priority for your time and energy and what isn't the priority. And so finding a place to move the boxes out of the way as you pack is important. B, you are going to be culling through all of your stuff as quickly as possible, and you're going to have to sacrifice the time and effort that you put into, for instance, how many things you go put in recycling. That process of gathering things up and collapsing the boxes, taking the cardboard, putting all that stuff that you do to manage it and then have it disappear, it's an extra chore and an extra use of your time. So you may have to, like the person that was doing it in a week or in 5 weeks, these are the kinds of extra processing that you have to surrender in order to make the move happen, in order to make it take place. And so you're going to end up making merciless decisions about what is worth your time and effort to pack and what isn't, and then trying to get rid of the stuff that isn't worth your time may be a matter of it all goes in the trash, it all goes at the curb, and you're letting people pick through it because you don't have time to deal. I will
Gayle,
say that, yes.
I'm going to just add, even when you think you have plenty of time, you might not. We planned our last move with loads of time to spare, and then about a month and a half out, our apartment complex decided to do some plumbing repairs, major plumbing repairs, which meant the water was turned off for 9 days out of the last 3 weeks as we're packing. And so we lost a whole bunch of time to something completely beyond our control, which is just adds further strength to the argument that you need to plan way more time than you need.
Start early.
And Petra commented, for our previous move, we were combining 2 households, and it took us 2 years to empty the last room where we stored leftovers or things we didn't yet know what we would do with. Our last move was from a very similar house to the one we have now. However, it used to be my mother-in-law's house, and my husband and his sister didn't get to sort everything. So now we are in a similar situation again. Ugh, I really thought I had learned my lesson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Petra. That's sad. And, dealing with the inheritance is always hard. And it creates that extra emotional factor where if it was emotionally neutral things, you could treat it as a project and handle it. But your husband and his sister have to face it as the kids, and and they have to do it from that place of loss, and it makes it so much harder to deal with. I'm sorry. I know what you're going through. This process, a compacted move, means that everything that you look at and go, oh, that really needs to go to fill in the blank, or oh, I got to return that. None of those chores can happen in advance. And so one of the boxes that you may want to make is, this is a box of things that have to go to other people, and you just pack those things all in one box, because distributing them can't happen on the front end. But I would work really hard at what you're really saying is, I want to let this object go, and I think that the perfect person to have it is fill in the blank, and therefore I have a to-do item, which is take this thing to that person. And you might want to be a little bit more ruthless than that and go, yeah, but do they really want this thing? And do I really want to spend my time worried about that, and let it go off into the universe some other way?
Ruthless, or at least flexible.
Right?
This is one of those places where the perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yes. Oh my God, that's perfect.
When it just needs to be gone.
It just needs to be gone.
We ran into that. we ran into that situation too, because there was someone who was going to take our couch who backed out at the last minute because of conflicts. And then we're stuck with this couch that we had to dispose of in the last 48 hours before we left.
And it was an apartment. It wasn't like you could leave it behind. It was,
right.
You know, you had to get rid of it in order to get your deposit back and all that stuff. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that's concerning me about this woman who's saying she's got 5 weeks and she's got other things in the way and she's got back problems is that she really needs people. She really needs bodies to help. And having bodies to come during a pandemic right now is a problematic thing, but the moving companies are still operating, and so they have to take their own, protect their employees, make their employees feel safe environment, and therefore those people have to take care as they come in their house. They're already doing it because the employees all have to be around each other, and so I think that it is a risky operation to do right now, but it is still going to be necessary. And so all of the things that you're doing to go in the grocery store and feel safe, you're going to have to do with the moving people to feel safe. And I think in her situation with the time frame and her physical issues, the only way that she can be ready in 5.5 weeks is with extra people coming to help and pack. And so it is an expensive thing to do to have the movers provide packers, but it does mean that you throw a bunch of people into the house, they pack everything up, and it gets ready to go. And so if you can come up with the cash flow to make that happen, and you can get people to come in to help you in a short time frame, then they're just going to pack everything in sight. They're going to pack it exactly where it is. And so how you can still help yourself in that situation is once you've determined that people are going to come and pack you at the back end towards the end of the move, then you can go through and find the things that make you super nervous that they're going to pack. You can pack those things that are super important to you. And then you can also go looking for things that you know can be donated that you know are not going, and go and subtract things that you don't want them to pack, and make sure those things get out of the house before the packers come. So if you are able to hire people to come and pack because of your compressed time frame, then you can serve yourself by removing things that don't need to go, and by packing things that you are super worried about. So for me, it was the beads. When I moved here, I didn't trust a bunch of 20-year-olds who were running back and forth and moving boxes on dollies to get my beads in and out of the house without breaking something. And so I packed and moved all the beads myself, and then let the movers come and pack everything else. And that was worth it. I was willing to spend my time to ensure that the beads were okay, and it was a good use of my time. And they could pack all the other stuff. Like, they could get my clothes in a wardrobe box and it was fine. What you're really doing at this point when you have 5 weeks or 4 weeks to move is you're kicking some of the work you're kicking the can down the road, right? You're kicking the work down the road. And so you're going to be unpacking boxes at the other end and going, oh my God, why on earth do I still have this thing? Why did I bring this with me? Well, because of the time frame. So treating this like, if you have a compressed time frame, treating this like this is your job. For this month, you are now employed by yourself, and your employment is to get your stuff ready to move, and focusing on that and nothing else if you can manage it. And if you can't do that, then getting people in to focus for you, and which is what my friends are doing. They're both still working from home, and so I am packing while they are working, and then when they're not working, then they're helping me pack as well. And so you're going to need bodies. Even in the pandemic, you're going to need bodies who are, wearing gloves and wearing a mask to make sure that they're not spreading anything. And you're going to need to be very, very ruthless about what you take, and make sure that you take out everything that you can. Don't let them pack anything that you don't have to. All of that being a caveat, that the shorter that the time frame shrinks, the less you get to filter, the more you just have to pack and get gone. And then you're going to do all the work on the other end. And I'm sorry, because it's going to be ugly when you're unpacking a bunch of boxes that you don't want to deal with. As a project, moving is always super disruptive, and it's always something that requires a whole bunch of focus and a whole bunch of man hours. And either you hire those man hours in or you do them yourself. And the more that you do them yourself, the more you have to filter based on your own physical capacity. And it may not be physically possible for you to do all the things that you want to do, distribute all the things that you want to distribute. And you're going to have to filter out and pick the priorities, and constantly be asking yourself, what is the priority for me today? What is the priority of what is in this house that needs my attention? And always putting that at the top of the list. And that may be counterintuitive, because some of those things that you want to go deal with may not be the most important thing for you to deal with in terms of getting stuff on the truck. And, you know, when the moving truck shows up on April 30th at my client's house, we better be ready. That's the thing. You can't still be packing when the moving truck comes, because they're only going to take what's packed. And if you leave half the house behind, you're going to have to circle around and do it yourself with a car later. And won't that be a pain in the patootie? So it's very important to stay focused on what gets you closer to the move, what gets you ready for the move. And don't let yourself be doing stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the move. And that is my advice for the day as I sit in the middle of this move project.
I want to remind our viewers and listeners that our YouTube channel contains more than 100 videos on a wide variety of organizing topics. Go to cfhou.com/YouTube and click subscribe on YouTube to receive notifications whenever we post a new video. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe.
Ta-da.
Any final thoughts on moves?
Moving is so stressful, and moving right now is just really, really stressful. And I am in the house with them because I haven't been exposed to a lot of people. I haven't been working with a lot of other clients, and they have been at home since very, very early on. And so we feel relatively safe working together. We recognize that we're taking a risk. And if you're trying to pack right now, you just need to be really careful to take care of yourself. And the shorter your time frame, the more ruthless you have to be. That's the final thought about it. If you are trying to move right now and you're doing it in a compressed time frame, this is now the era of priorities. You have to pick your priorities. And right now the priorities are staying safe and getting your most important things with you to the next destination. And you have no time to be waffling about all of the extras that you have. Take all the toilet paper with you. Leave the rest. There, that's my final thought.
I have one more final thought.
Okay.
And I'm going to share my
hand sanitizer. Yes.
I'm going to share a picture.
Oh. That is the back of Ed's car when he moved. So they drove from Texas to Tennessee, and that is the back of the car. And the hilarious thing is the cardboard box in the middle right there, that's actually the base of Bob the lemon tree. And there's actually a tree in there that apparently goes through the center of the car back towards the front of the car, which I think is hilarious. And poor little Hardy, the dog, got to ride in the little doggy bed up on top of a bunch of other stuff right behind the driver's seat. And there's one picture with Hardy and his little head back there going, Daddy, why am I in this corner in the car? It's so hilarious.
Here, I can share that one too.
Yeah. And the thing about moving, everybody always thinks, oh, I'll put that in the car, except that the car is a much smaller. There, see, there's little Hardy's little head right there. Oh, there's only so much room in the car, and you can't put everything in the car. And so unless you're going to make 37 trips with your car, the idea that you're going to carry it yourself or you're going to put it all in the car is, that has to be reserved for a very, very select few things, because your car's going to fill up fast. So,
well, and Petra said, if everything fits in one car, you must be a minimalist. And I wish that it were so. That's just what had to go in the car.
Right.
Because for one reason or another, it couldn't go in the 20-foot truck that the movers were taking.
Right.
Meaning that was things we knew we would need in the next few days. The live plants, the dog. His food, all the open bottles of cleaning supplies.
The liquids and stuff that they won't put on the trucks anymore.
The little bit of perishable food that we wanted to take with us. All of that. So
yes, Hardy is adorable. He's a very cute little dog. And he was a trooper. He just went, he's like, oh, Daddy's going, okay, I'm in the car. He doesn't even care. He's just very nonchalant about, oh, here's my bed, okay. Yeah, it was and part of the issue was that he was going across country. So cross country, if you're moving locally, you can make 63 car trips after the movers are gone and take all the rest of the stuff. But other than it physically exhausts you and annoys you, you don't really want to do that. But when you're moving cross country, you get one shot. So this was their one shot, and they loaded it up to the gills, and that's all that went in there. And I still can't believe there was a live tree in there. That's the thing that makes me so hysterical.
We are running out of time.
All right.
We love to hear from you, so please send us your questions and topic suggestions in the YouTube comments or on any of our channels. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Love to see you guys. We hope that you're continuing to stay safe, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.